Number 15. Sleeping with the enemy. Water gently lapped against the shore as the campers climbed into their bright blue tents, which dotted Boca de Iguanas on the Mexican coast. Their crackling fire had died down, leaving behind charred logs and scattered bags of rubbish. What began as a relaxing summer night would soon grow tense. Attracted by the scent of food and waste, a massive crocodile had stealthily made its way onto the campsite. It maneuvered through the shadows, finally coming to rest mere inches away from one of the tents, where an unsuspecting camper lay deep in sleep. Inside the tent, the camper was blissfully unaware of the looming danger. One of the other campers, having emerged from his tent, must have thought he was seeing things when his eyes landed on the massive form lying next to his friend's tent. As he took up his phone to film the unbelievable scene, the crocodile remained motionless, seemingly also asleep. The tent remained wide open, leaving the sleeping man at the croc's mercy. The camera zoomed in on the pair, capturing the terrifying proximity of the massive predator to the sleeping man. According to the cameraman, the croc, likely drawn by the food remnants that had been left strewn about the campsite, had been their bedmate overnight. We can only imagine that when the man inside the tent finally opened his eyes and turned his head to see the crocodile's grinning face mere feet away, his heart must have stopped. Authorities were notified, and they issued reminders to visitors to be mindful of the presence of local wildlife and to take appropriate precautions. Although it hasn't been verified what species of croc they'd faced, the American crocodile is common to the Mexican coast. It can grow to staggering lengths of up to 20 feet, although individuals averaging around 13 to 16 feet are more common. One of its most striking features is its long, V-shaped snout, filled with a fearsome array of conical teeth. These teeth are perfectly adapted for seizing and holding onto prey, which the crocodile then swallows whole. American crocodiles are primarily nocturnal hunters. Under the cover of darkness, they stealthily patrol the water's edge, scanning for potential prey. When a target is identified, the crocodile launches a sudden, explosive attack, using its powerful jaws to grasp and drag the prey into the water. Death usually comes by drowning or from the sheer force of the bite, which can crush bones. Despite their fearsome reputation, American crocodiles are generally shy and reclusive creatures. They tend to avoid human contact whenever possible, and attacks on humans are relatively rare. This is partly due to their shy nature, and partly because of their declining population, which has led them to inhabit increasingly remote and secluded areas. However, as human development encroaches on their habitats, interactions between crocodiles and people have become more frequent, sometimes with tragic results. Luckily, this encounter didn't end tragically. Once the campers quickly gathered their belongings, they were safely away. They had been incredibly fortunate this time, but the encounter was an important reminder not to leave food or waste behind. Number 14. Crab infestation. A secluded speck in the Indian Ocean, Christmas Island is known for its vibrant wildlife and serene beaches. However, the remote paradise danced to life on a million clicking feet one balmy evening when the McKendrick family, on a much-anticipated camping trip, found themselves at the center of a bizarre and terrifying encounter. Christmas Island is a land of natural wonders, particularly famous for its red crab migration. It is also home to the world's largest population of robber crabs, or coconut crabs, which can grow up to 3 feet in length. These massive crustaceans are known for their strength and their peculiar habit of climbing coconut trees to feed on the large fruits. They are usually harmless to humans, earning the nickname gentle giants. Still, their formidable appearance and size can be quite intimidating, especially in large numbers. Blissfully unaware of the drama about to unfold, the McKendricks set up their campsite near the island's lush forest. They had prepared a barbecue and were enjoying a quiet evening under the stars. Little did they know, dozens of pinching gatecrashers would soon show up at their door. Jill, the mother of the family, was filming their idyllic setup and posted updates on Instagram all evening, highlighting the beautiful surroundings and their delight at being on such a unique island. But as the sun went down, a rustling noise could be heard from the forest. At first, the family dismissed it as the wind or the scurrying of small animals. But the rustling grew louder and closer, transforming into a persistent crunching sound. Suddenly, Ben, the eldest son, pointed towards the tree line in shock. Emerging from the shadows, a wave of massive robber crabs began to invade the campsite. Their enormous pincers clicked ominously. Destination: BBQ. Jill's camera captured the surreal scene as more than 50 of these colossal creatures swarmed the area, drawn by the aroma of cooking meat. The family's fear gave way to a bizarre fascination. Despite their menacing appearance, the crabs did not show any aggression. Instead, they meandered around, searching for scraps of food. Their sheer size was astonishing, some measuring over 3 feet wide, their long legs making them appear even larger. As the crabs closed in on the barbecue, the family realized they needed to act. They gently nudged the crabs away with a stick, careful not to hurt them. Jill's voice, captured on the footage, was a mix of nervous laughter and calm reassurance. "They are relatively peaceful," she said, recalling the advice she had read about the crabs. "They can be moved away gently or sometimes picked up and moved. No pinching." Carefully, the family managed to create a barrier between the crabs and their dinner, pushing the gatecrashers back towards the forest edge. As though they understood they weren't welcome, the crabs slowly retreated. The McKendricks watched as the last of the crabs gave up and disappeared into the darkness. The Christmas Island Tourism Group later shared Jill's footage on Facebook, captioning it, "Robber crabs behaving badly." A couple of local #Christmas Island families had a few extra mouths to feed at their barbecue over the weekend. The McKendrick family had witnessed firsthand the fascinating and slightly unnerving behavior of Christmas Island's most infamous residents. Nearly robbed of their dinner by robber crabs, the experience left them with a unique story they would tell for years to come. Number 13. Swept away. The first day of the new year should have been a time of celebration for Maddie Northeast and her family. Instead, it turned into a harrowing ordeal that they would never forget. Camped at Numinbah Valley in Queensland's Gold Coast, the Northeast family settled into their tents, unaware of what was to come. The night had been filled with the sound of rain, but in the early hours of New Year's morning, a nearby creek burst its banks after swelling from days of downpour. The campers now faced a life-or-death encounter. The campsite was instantly consumed by a raging torrent. Maddie was asleep when the water surged through, sweeping her tent along with it. She awoke to the sensation of cold water rushing in and the terrifying realization that she was being carried away by the flood. Her tent was dragged approximately 40 meters downstream, where it came to an abrupt stop, trapped against a fallen tree. The tent then filled rapidly with water, pinning her against the tree's trunk. Struggling to breathe, Maddie cried out for help, her voice almost drowned out by the roaring floodwaters. Luckily, her campsite neighbors were alerted by the commotion and rushed to her aid. The severity of the situation prompted one of the campers to grab an axe. They hacked away at the tent's fabric, racing against time as the water continued to rise. Once free, Maddie and the other campers faced another challenge, as the floodwaters showed no sign of receding. The group of 14 climbed atop the roofs of their vehicles, hoping to stay above the deluge until help arrived. Hours later, rescuers from the State Emergency Service, SES, navigated through the treacherous waters to bring them to safety. Despite the traumatic experience, Maddie remained positive. "Grateful to be alive," she posted. Her brother Josh echoed her sentiments. "I lost my car and all our camp gear, but at least we came out safe," he said. The incident sparked mixed reactions online, with some sympathizing with the campers, while others criticized their decision to camp near a creek during a season known for heavy rains. "Well, if you don't want to listen to the warnings, then what do you expect?" one comment read. The flash flood at Numinbah Valley was part of a broader pattern of extreme weather battering Australia's east coast. More than 500 millimeters of rain had fallen on the Gold Coast alone, causing widespread flooding and triggering numerous rescues. The State Emergency Service reported over 115 callouts and completed 27 rescues in just one 24-hour period in New South Wales. As the Northeast family began the daunting task of recovering from the disaster, A GoFundMe page was set up to help replace their lost possessions. The community helped the family regain some of what they lost, and most importantly, provided a feeling of support after a harrowing experience. Number 12. Black-Eyed Child. Kylie and Ben pitched their tent in the dense forest of Cannock Chase in the secluded Birches Valley, Staffordshire, in the UK. It was the summer of 2021. Separated by the pandemic for too long, the teenage pair had stolen away to share a night together. Camping illegally in the middle of the forest was enough of a rush, but their rash decision would soon bring them another rush. They would come face to face with an urban legend. By midnight, the forest had fallen dark. Kylie and Ben lay in their tent, chatting, until a peculiar noise broke the night's relative silence. Something was moving outside, circling their tent with a soft, cautious step. Initially, they thought it might be a deer, but the sound of footsteps gave them pause. Ben slowly unzipped his tent. His flashlight cut through the darkness, but found nothing but trees and shadows. Then they heard it, a child's giggle, flittering lightly through the forest. The giggling grew louder, and Ben saw it first. A small figure darting from tree to tree, its movements quick and unnatural. The figure stepped into the clearing, standing in full view of their torchlight. It was a little girl, her eyes black as coal, staring at them with an unchildlike intensity. "I was absolutely terrified," Kylie later recounted to Lee Brickley, a supernatural investigator. "I'd read the stories about the black-eyed child, but seeing her in front of me was something else. She moved in ways humans simply can't. It was like she could teleport from one place to another." For those unfamiliar with the urban legend, black-eyed children are mysterious entities, usually appearing as children between the ages of 6 and 16, with pale skin and solid black eyes, completely devoid of whites, irises, or pupils. Their eyes are their most distinctive feature, appearing as bottomless, soulless voids like black holes. The first known reports of black-eyed children began circulating in the late 1990s. Primarily through online forums and personal accounts. One of the most well-known accounts comes from journalist Brian Bethel, who in 1996 described an encounter with 2 black-eyed children who approached his car and requested a ride. Since then, numerous similar stories have emerged from around the world, each bearing a striking resemblance to Bethel's experience. On this night, Ben and Kylie were experiencing their own encounter. As the child began to giggle, the pair recoiled. Ben reported, "The giggling grew louder, surrounding us, even though she was right there." The girl bent down, as if adjusting her shoes, then stood up and sprinted down a nearby path, vanishing into the forest. Frozen with fear, Kylie and Ben huddled together in their tent, waiting for the dawn. When the sun filtered through the trees, they emerged from their tent, hoping the light would shed some truth on the terror of the night. But what they found only compounded their fear. Piles of stones were evenly spaced around their tent, and strange stick formations resembling dream catchers hung from the trees around them. They knew one thing: they needed to leave. Now. They quickly packed up and began to walk back to Ben's car. As they neared the edge of the forest, Kylie froze. The black-eyed child was peering at them from behind the trunk, her dark eyes boring into theirs. Grabbing Kylie's hand, Ben pulled her into a sprint, racing to the safety of their car. The encounter left them shaken. Their story joined many other documented reports of this particular black-eyed child's haunting presence in Cannock Chase. Some believe the area is a portal, a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Each new account only adds to the enigma, especially when the images captured are this terrifying. Number 11. Bloodsuckers. The rolling hills of the Scottish Highlands are renowned for their breathtaking beauty, but they harbor a tiny menace that can turn any outdoor adventure into a nightmare: the Highland Midge. Colin Ibbotson, an experienced outdoor equipment designer from Tadcaster, North Yorkshire, discovered this firsthand during a camping trip by Loch Monagh in Glen Strathrower, West Highlands. Aware of the region's notorious reputation for midges, the seasoned hillwalker had planned his trip to the letter. He arrived at Loch Monagher and set up camp amidst the scenic landscape. The first night he spent there had been completely midge-free, thanks to a steady breeze that kept the tiny bloodsuckers at bay. However, as dawn broke, the wind died down, and an ominous sound began to fill the air. It started as a faint patter that sounded like light rain tapping against the tent, but the sky was clear, and rain wasn't in the forecast. Colin then realized the terrifying truth. The noise was the relentless assault of thousands of midges attempting to breach his sanctuary. He knew he was in for a tough morning. Equipped with long sleeves, a midge net over his face, and his socks tightly tucked into his trousers, Colin assumed he was well enough prepared. He had also doused himself in smidge, a popular repellent for added protection. But as he unzipped his tent and stepped outside, he was greeted by a scene out of a horror movie. A thick, swirling cloud of midges engulfed him instantly. The tiny, voracious insects blanketed his rucksack, creating a twitching dark mass over the straps. They clung to his clothing, crawled over his socks, and buzzed incessantly around his head. Somehow still remaining stoic, Colin documented the surreal encounter. "Look how thick the midges are on my pack," he narrated. "It is absolutely covered. I've seen a lot of midges before, but this is probably a different level. Just look at these. This is ridiculous." Despite his best efforts, some midges managed to find their way through his defenses. He felt the occasional sting around his ankles to remind him that the Highlands, with their enchanting vistas, were also home to one of nature's most persistent pests. The footage Colin shared online quickly went viral, garnering thousands of likes and comments. People from all over expressed their horror and fascination. Some joked about the midge's tenacity, while others shared their own traumatic encounters with the infamous Highland bloodsucker. Midge season in Scotland typically lasts from late May to September. The insects emerge in colossal numbers, and recent warm weather had triggered what experts dubbed a mega hatch, leading to unprecedented swarms. Regardless of the experience, Colin knew the risks, and he embraced them as part of the adventure. Number 10. Blair Witch House. It was like any other day for YouTuber Dateline420, a seasoned hiker. On one October afternoon, he ventured deep into Berkeley-Jackson County Park in Huntington, New York, hoping to capture the colors of fall through his camera lens. In one hand, he held his camera, and in the other, a knife for safety. He walked sure-footed along the trail, as though he'd been there before. But as he wandered off the beaten path, the atmosphere began to change. The trees grew denser, the air grew more still. A creeping sensation settled over the YouTuber. Just as he considered turning back, he spotted something unusual in a clearing up ahead. As he approached, the sight ahead immediately raised alarm bells. In the center of the clearing before him stood a large, tattered tent, surrounded by an assortment of disturbing items. Ratty old bedding was strewn about, a rusted shovel had been propped against a tree, and the remains of a fire pit were encircled by tree stumps. Obviously, someone had been staying here. But it was what else he found nearby that put him on edge. A handmade wooden cage, now collapsed, enclosed a filled-in hole. The crude cage had been constructed from branches lashed together with rope. It looked altogether sinister. Then he noticed the posters. At least 25 missing persons posters were taped to the surrounding trees, each one encased in a plastic sleeve to protect it from the elements. Faces of men, women, and children stared back at him. Were these records? Trophies? Clearly shaken, the YouTuber documented each one meticulously, narrating his findings in a hushed voice. There's like 25 missing persons posters here, along with some ratty old bedding, a shovel, a large tent, and a handmade wooden cage surrounding a filled-in hole, he described. As he circled the camp, his knife clutched tightly in his hand, he suddenly heard voices. They were faint at first, but growing louder, coming from the direction of a nearby residence. He had to get out of there, but he needed to pinpoint this location first. After waiting for the voices to subside, he circled back around and quickly marked the spot using his phone's sat-nav before fleeing the disturbing scene. The YouTuber uploaded the footage to his channel, describing his harrowing experience. In the video description, he states that once he fled the camp, he contacted the police. Local law enforcement conducted an investigation and reported that residents of the neighboring property claimed the missing persons posters were intended as decorations for their upcoming Halloween party. The police found this explanation satisfactory and decided not to take further action. The residents have stated that the posters will be taken down, but this has not yet been confirmed. Whether or not it was a staged scene for Halloween, the eerie camp, with its relics and haunting posters, succeeded in living rent-free in our heads, with many wondering whether the site marked something far more sinister. Number 9. Creepy Figure. Mike Collins lay in his sleeping bag, his family members surrounding him, as they camped in the heart of Edenbridge, Kent. It was a rare and much-needed getaway for the family, and the group found peace in nature. That is, until Mike awoke to a disturbing noise at 3 a.m., a faint scratching sound outside the tent. His heart pounded as he strained to listen, the noise growing louder and more insistent. Carefully unzipping the tent, one of the family members peered out into the darkness. The scratching persisted, coming from the trees just beyond their campsite. She snapped a photo of their surroundings in the direction of where the sound seemed to originate, and then retreated back into the tent. The family gathered to examine the photo. At first glance, it was difficult to make out anything unusual. But as they zoomed in, a chill ran down their spines. Atop one of the tree's branches, a large creature with a humanoid body seemed to be lurking and watching. 2 arms were outstretched, bracing itself in the tree, and a set of orb-like eyes glowed eerily in the darkness. The family enhanced the photo, brightening it to reveal more details. The creature's eyes seemed to burn with an unnatural light, its limbs long and spindly, almost skeletal. It watched them from above, its gaze unblinking and menacing. Mike took to social media, posting the photo with a caption that read, "This picture was taken at approximately 3 a.m. during a camping trip to Edenbridge, Kent, UK. A family member took the picture after being awoken by noises outside the tent." The upload quickly went viral, garnering more than 4,600 likes and over 840 comments. Reactions were mixed. Some were skeptical that the photo was legit, while others were genuinely frightened. Many argued about what the figure was. Some believed it was a man wearing glasses or using night vision goggles, but others argued the body was too strangely proportioned to be human. They suggested that it was a cryptid. The family never did find out what was lurking outside their tent. Regardless, as they drove away from Edenbridge, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had encountered something otherworldly. Whether it was a trick of the light or something more sinister, one thing was certain: they would never look at the woods the same again. Number 8. Idaho Lake Creature. Nestled in the town of McCall, Idaho, Payette Lake is a favorite spot for locals to go boating, swimming, and picnicking. But for one vacationing family, the trip was about to become an unforgettable encounter with the unknown. It was a hot afternoon when the family set out on their boat. As they drifted in the lake, the tranquility of nature was suddenly broken by something seemingly unnatural. They noticed an unusual bubbling on the surface of the water ahead. Squinting, they tried to make out the shape beneath the surface. The water began to bubble and churn even more, and a large mass emerged from below. They quickly started recording to capture the unknown anomaly. 2 of their party, preparing to jump from a rock into the water, were gesturing at the creature from above, while those in the boat exclaimed, "What is that?" They wondered, could it be Charlie? The legendary lake monster of Payette Lake had been a subject of local folklore for generations. Long before Western settlers laid eyes on Payette Lake, the Native Americans of the region spoke of a fearsome presence lurking beneath the surface. They believed that the lake was home to an evil spirit, a malevolent entity akin to the Loch Ness Monster that inspired both fear and reverence. This ancient lore set the stage for what would become one of Idaho's most enduring legends, Charlie, the lake monster. Western settlers first documented a Charley sighting in 1920. A group of workers at the northern part of the lake were cutting ties when they noticed what they initially thought was a log floating on the water. To their astonishment, the log started moving, undulating through the lake with a life of its own. This brief encounter would mark the beginning of modern-day reports of the mysterious creature. The most significant wave of sightings began in the 1940s. In August of 1944, multiple groups reported seeing a large serpent in the lake. These witnesses described the creature as being 30 to 35 feet long, with a head reminiscent of a dinosaur and serious jaws. The creature's body was marked by what looked like camel humps, and its skin appeared shell-like. 2 years later, in September of 1946, the legend of Charley gained further credibility when a large group claimed to have seen the monster. Among these witnesses was Dr. G.A. Taylor of Nampa, Idaho, who provided a detailed account of the sighting. He also described the creature as being around 30 to 40 feet in length, with behavior that involved repeatedly diving into the water. Dr. Taylor noted that the serpent left a wake similar to that of a small motorboat, a detail that added a sense of its enormity. This new video now breathed new life into the legend. Submitted to a local news station, the video quickly went viral. The creature renewed its place as a topic of fascination and debate. And yet, the mystery lurking beneath the murky water's surface remains. Number 7. Engulfed in spiders. About 100 miles southwest of Anchorage, the remote wilderness of Lake Clark National Park and Preserve is known for its rugged beauty and solitude. But on this October evening, it became the backdrop for a scene straight out of a horror film. E. Kramer, an avid backpacker, had spent the day hiking through the breathtaking landscape, taking in the towering mountains and pristine lakes that make Lake Clark one of Alaska's hidden gems. After a day's work, Kramer set up camp in a secluded spot. As night fell, Kramer lit a small campfire and prepared a simple meal. Later, he retired to the tent, snuggling into a warm sleeping bag, unaware of the horror that would soon unfold. A few hours later, Kramer woke with a start to an inexplicable sensation of being surrounded. Fumbling for the flashlight, the beam revealed an unsettling sight. The tent's interior was moving. Kramer blinked, trying to comprehend what was happening. The tent walls, illuminated by the flashlight, seemed almost translucent, showing countless silhouettes skittering across the surface. Hundreds of daddy longlegs had swarmed the tent, their long, spindly appendages creating a ghastly shadow web. Panic set in as Kramer realized the tent was engulfed by the creatures. The arachnids, which are actually more closely related to scorpions than spiders, covered every inch of the tent. As they consumed his temporary home, it became little wonder to him that Lake Clark National Park and Preserve is one of the least visited parks in the United States. The video, credited to E. Kramer and the National Park Service, captured one of the chilling reasons why. In the footage, the tent appears positively engulfed by the mass of daddy longlegs. The park officials estimated that there were hundreds, a writhing mass of legs and bodies. On social media, the post quickly drew reactions of horror and fascination. Some viewers speculated about what could attract so many daddy longlegs to one spot, while others simply shuddered at the thought of such an encounter. Despite their unsettling appearance, daddy longlegs are harmless to humans. They feed on small insects, mites, spiders, vegetable matter, and snails. Yet when surrounded, their non-threatening nature is far from comforting. Number 6. Someone's watching. Carter and Jake were settling in for the evening in an isolated spot surrounded by dense woods. The two friends had been planning this camping trip for months, eager to escape and enjoy some quiet time in nature. As night fell, they gathered firewood and built a crackling fire. Carter set up his camera on a nearby rock to document their fun. Jake attempted to snap a thick branch over his knee to feed the fire, grunting in mock effort as Carter laughed and recorded the scene. The camera panned around, catching a glimpse of the dark forest and the rocky outcrop surrounding their campsite. Satisfied with their work, Carter switched off the camera, and they continued their night under the stars, unaware that the whole while, something had been watching them. The next day, After packing up and leaving the makeshift campsite behind, Carter uploaded the footage to his TikTok account, eager to share their adventure with friends and followers. But when he watched the clip back, he saw something unsettling. He titled the clip, "Never Been So Disturbed." The video quickly went viral, amassing over 4.4 million views. Thousands of comments flooded in, with most viewers seeing nothing out of the ordinary in the footage. However, a few sharp-eyed commenters noticed something deeply disturbing. The footage showed Jake struggling with the branch, then the camera panning around the dark outline of trees and rocks above them. In the shadows, barely discernible, were the outlines of two human figures, standing motionless atop the rocks, looking down at the friends. Carter and Jake had been completely unaware of any other presence during their trip. The realization that they were not alone, and instead were being stalked by unknown figures, was terrifying. After all, they'd spent hours laughing, joking, and feeling secure in their isolation, never suspecting a thing. Who were these figures? What were they? These questions will remain unanswered. Number 5. Croc Invasion. Brazilian TikToker Victor Trindade and his friend lay inside their tent as the nearby river lulled them to sleep. They had chosen a secluded spot for their camping trip, far away from civilization, but they'd soon wish they were closer to home. Victor woke to a strange noise, a rustling and scraping sound that seemed to come from all around the tent. Groggy and disoriented, he reached for his flashlight. As he shone his light outside, it reflected off dozens of pairs of eyes, glowing like flames in the night. Victor shook his friend awake. He knew they had a problem, and soon they had a bigger one. The tent had capsized under the weight of numerous alligators, their tough, scaly bodies pressed into the canvas, trying to find a way inside. The alligators were not just around the tent, they were on top of it, their claws scraping the fabric. The two men were surrounded by over a dozen predators, each capable of tearing through the flimsy material of their tent in seconds. Trying to stay level-headed, Victor turned on his camera and began filming. He knew they needed to remain calm and think clearly if they were going to survive this. Somehow, the pair managed to flee their tent. Victor captured a follow-up video, showing the flattened tent and the remains of their campsite. With their rough, rocky hides and cold, unblinking eyes, the predators were relentless. They continued to prowl around the empty tent. Victor shone his flashlight directly into their eyes, but the alligators merely blinked and continued to trample the campsite. Uploading the clip to TikTok, he captioned it, "The camp didn't work out very well," to clear up doubts. Within hours, the video had gone viral, amassing over 100,000 likes and thousands of comments from horrified viewers. Their narrow escape became a legend among their followers. It told a story of survival against one of nature's most fearsome predators. Number 4. Terrifying Message. Embracing van life, Joe and his partner parked their home on wheels near a small clearing, the perfect spot to settle in for the night. Joe had been documenting the pair's travels across the Pacific Northwest on TikTok. Their followers loved the couple's adventures and the picturesque landscapes they shared. Tonight, however, the usual joy in their videos would be replaced by fear. On a stump behind their van sat a flat, smooth rock, revealing a message crudely carved into it with the chilling words, "I will kill again." A cold shiver ran down their spine. Their immediate reaction was disbelief, thinking it must be a prank. But the gravity of the message quickly set in. This seemed too menacing to be a simple joke. Joe pulled out his phone and started recording, documenting the eerie scene for their TikTok followers. "I'm not easily shaken, but this gave me literal goosebumps," Joe narrated, panning the camera over the rock. The stark white letters stood out against the dark granite, as if the message was meant for them. The couple retreated to their van, locking the doors and shutting the windows. They debated their next move, and finally decided to call the police, their usual aversion to law enforcement overshadowed by fear. The police were skeptical at first, suspecting a prank or a hoax. But Joe insisted they investigate. He said, "We don't know who could have left this message or what their intentions are. We're really scared." As they waited for the authorities to arrive, Joe continued to update their followers with a series of videos, documenting the phone calls with the police and their growing unease. If someone who hates cops as much as we do calls for their help, you know something bad happened, Joe remarked in one of the clips. Comments poured in from concerned viewers. Some suggested it was a staged stunt, while others warned them about the area's dark history. The PNW is known for having an abundance of serial killers. Stay safe, find a different camp spot, one user advised. This user was right. Encompassing states like Washington, Oregon, and parts of Northern California, the Pacific Northwest has produced some of the most infamous serial killers in American history, one of the most notorious being Ted Bundy. Bundy's reign of terror began in Washington and Oregon before spreading to other parts of the country. He confessed to 30 homicides across 7 states between 1974 and 1978, but the actual number of victims of his cruelty is believed to be higher. Then there's Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. Ridgway was convicted of 49 murders, but he confessed to killing at least 71 women in Washington state during the 1980s and 1990s. Most of his victims were workers or otherwise vulnerable young women who he strangled and then disposed of in the Green River or surrounding areas. Robert Lee Yates was convicted of killing at least 11 women in Spokane, Washington during the 1990s. His victims were typical workers who he picked up, shot, and then dumped in rural areas. And then there's Randall Woodfield, aka the I-5 Killer, who's believed to have killed at least 18 people, though some estimates suggest up to 44 victims, along the Interstate 5 corridor from Washington to California during the late 1970s and early 1980s. The multitude of prolific serial killers in the Pacific Northwest raises questions about what makes this area particularly conducive to such heinous crimes. One reason is due to its geography and climate. The Pacific Northwest is characterized by vast, dense forests, mountainous regions, and remote rural areas. These secluded environments provide ideal locations for killers to dispose of bodies without detection. The sheer size and ruggedness of the landscape makes searches difficult and time-consuming. The region's frequent rain and mist can also obscure evidence and make it challenging for law enforcement to gather clues. Decomposition rates can vary with the weather, potentially complicating forensic analysis. Another aspect is the severe urban-rural divide, along with the area's large transient population. The proximity of urban centers like Seattle and Portland to remote, less populated areas means that killers can easily transport victims from busy, anonymous urban environments to isolated rural locations, where they can commit their crimes without witnesses. The Pacific Northwest is also home to a number of vulnerable groups. The significant transient population, including a large number of homeless individuals, runaways, and workers, is often targeted by serial killers because these disappearances are less likely to be noticed or investigated promptly. Considering the Pacific Northwest's reputation, it is no surprise that the TikTokers grew immediately alarmed at the message left outside their van. After handing over evidence to police, Joe posted a final update, thanking their followers for their support and assuring them they were safe. The ordeal had left them shaken, but also more vigilant, and perhaps more weary of who may have been watching. Number 3. Big Cat. It was early morning in the Peak District as Josh Williams and his friend Ben packed up their gear after a night of wild camping. They had set out from Kinder Scout's Mermaid's Pool in the UK, their path leading them towards Edale. The morning silence was occasionally punctuated by the distant bleating of sheep. They chatted about the previous day's adventures, unaware that their most startling experience was yet to come. As they descended Jacob's Ladder, Josh and Ben's pace slowed. Suddenly, a movement in a nearby field caught their attention. They squinted, trying to make out the shape. About 50 yards away, a sleek black figure was crouched in the field. It wasn't a sheep. It was much larger and darker. They stood, staring at the creature in bewilderment for several minutes, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The animal had a long black tail and was significantly larger than any domestic cat. Deciding to document the sighting, Josh grabbed his phone and began recording. Zooming in, the silhouette of the creature became clearer. It was a big cat, a panther or perhaps a black leopard. They watched apprehensively as the animal moved with predatory grace. The occasional crunching sound carried across the field, suggesting the cat was feeding on something, likely one of the sheep that usually inhabit these fields. They tried to get the creature's attention so they could see its face. As they observed, the other animals in the field appeared uneasy but kept their distance. Josh and Ben didn't dare move closer, fearful of what might happen if the creature decided they were a threat, or worse, prey. The duo finally decided to leave, reluctantly tearing themselves away to catch their train. The encounter weighed heavily on their minds and dominated their conversation during their return journey. They couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Once home, Josh showed the video to his college tutor and friends. Their reactions ranged from disbelief to amazement. The grainy footage showed a large, jet-black animal prowling the field, its movements too graceful to be anything but a big cat. The video went viral on TikTok, sparking debates and theories. Some viewers speculated it might be an escaped exotic pet, while others believed it was evidence of a previously unknown wild population in the area. Adding to the intrigue, a local YouTuber named Michael, known as Novice Wild Camper, reported hearing a guttural growl in the same area, which many believed sounded like a big cat. After these sightings, a swab was taken off a dead sheep in the Lake District, and it was announced that DNA analysis conducted at the University of Warwick revealed the presence of the Panthera genus. This marks the first instance of big cat DNA being identified on animal remains in the UK. Following this revelation, speculations have arisen regarding whether this evidence indicates the presence of a single big cat in the Lake District or suggests the existence of multiple big cats in the British countryside. Despite some skepticism from the social media sphere, this DNA confirmation left Josh and Ben with a story to tell, and a new fear unlocked. Number 2. The Lurker. It was November of 2022. The Circle F Dude Ranch in Lake Wales, Florida, served as the setting for the Indian Princess Bonding Program, a father-daughter initiative that fosters strong relationships through various shared experiences, like monthly gatherings, community events, individual and group competitions, and campouts. During one of these campouts, 3 teenage girls were settling in for the night, while their fathers stayed in a nearby cabin. At around 4 a.m., the cabin was dark, when suddenly movement awoke one of the girls. At the foot of her bed, a figure loomed. A man in an alien hoodie was crouched, his face partially hidden. Awaking the others, one of the girls instinctively grabbed her phone and started recording. She said afterwards that she did this in case they were killed. In the video, the man, Raul Moroyanes, a 25-year-old camp employee, seemed oblivious to the commotion he had caused. He staggered around the cabin, muttering to himself. Occasionally, he would hide under the bed, only to roll out moments later. The girls huddled together, trying to stay as far away from him as possible. One of the girls reached for her phone and called her father, her hands shaking so much she could barely dial. "Dad, there's a man in our cabin," she whispered into the phone. "We're scared. Please hurry." Her father immediately sprung into action. "Is the front door unlocked?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "Yeah, it is. Can you come in now?" his daughter answered. The girls watched in terror as Moroyanes continued to move around the cabin, seemingly unaware of their presence. The recording and the light shone on him captured the culprit's distinctive alien hoodie in the dark room. Despite the panic, she kept the camera trained on him, documenting the intruder's every move. Just as the girls' fathers were about to arrive, Moroyanes suddenly bolted for the door and fled into the night. Dad, he just left," the girl cried into the phone with relief. When the deputies arrived, Moroyanes was swiftly arrested. He claimed he had been drinking and thought the cabin was empty, but his explanations did little to calm the nerves of the frightened teens. The girls' fathers were outraged, demanding answers. Moroyanes, despite having a clean record and being a longtime employee at the camp, faced serious charges. He was released on a $25,000 bond and was scheduled to appear in court at a later date. Attorney Eric Schwartzreich criticized the handling of the case, emphasizing the need for thorough investigation, as the suspect's intentions remained unclear. Known for its family-friendly activities, the Circle F Dude Ranch was thrust into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Regardless of the man's intentions, the ordeal left the girls with trauma that may forever remain with them. Number 1. Herding the bear. While camping out in Lake Harmony, Pennsylvania, Mike and his friends had set up their chairs around a campfire with a TV rigged for evening entertainment. They were enjoying their outdoor retreat, completely oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes silenced the group. They only had a moment to exchange uneasy glances before a massive black bear emerged, curious and hungry. Most of the campers froze, everyone except Mike. Mike stood up and approached the bear with a mix of caution and bravado. "Be careful," his friends urged. Ignoring their pleas, he waved his arms, trying to shoo the animal away, but this only seemed to agitate the beast. The bear took a menacing step forward with a low growl, but Mike was undeterred. He continued to herd the bear away from the campsite, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The bear's eyes followed him as the standoff continued. Then, with a swift motion, the bear swiped at Mike, its powerful paw raking across his side. Blood seeped through his shirt, but he didn't falter. Instead, he pointed a stern finger at the bear and commanded, "No." The bear paused, seemingly taken aback by the human's audacity. Then, with a reluctant huff, he turned and lumbered towards the edge of the campsite. Mike continued to usher the bear, step by step, until they reached the gate. With one final wave of his arm, he directed the bear through the gap in the fence. The creature hesitated, then disappeared into the forest, leaving the other campers stunned. Returning to the group, Mike lifted his shirt to reveal 2 bloody gashes running up his side. Despite the pain, he managed a grin. The incident left the campers rattled, but grateful for their fearless friend. Recent bear invasions in the Poconos area are evidence that it could have been much worse. The previous September, a hungry mother bear and her 3 cubs had broken into a home on Pocono Lake, ransacking the kitchen for food. The terrifying video of the mama bear trying to open the front door with her paws had gone viral. In another incident, a Pennsylvania dad had been knocked down and bitten by a bear while filling up his children's pool in Montour County. The bear had been startled by the man while rummaging through the trash, leading to the man receiving a terrifying bite to his head before the animal fled. While this lucky group of campers didn't face such fate, they may have their fearless leader Mike to thank for that.